Coming up on Midco Sports tonight, it's all about high school baseball. Jody and Jandy reveal their rankings for North and South Dakota with some insight as well. Then we'll head to the Lynx. Midco SN's Tom Neiman and Max Jensen talk all things Masters. All of that plus much more. Midco Sports Tonight tips off right now. Good evening. Welcome to the show. I'm Kelly Stewart, and this is Midco Sports Tonight, joined right off the bat by Jay Elson after some exciting news broke today from the University of South Dakota. USD has hired a new men's basketball coach, Todd Lee. He comes to Vermilion from Grand Canyon University, but is no stranger to South Dakota in a few ways, Jay. So, in a sense, tell us about this guy. What do people need to know about Todd Lee and his background?
Well, I think first and foremost, people are going to be interested in the fact that this guy is a South Dakota guy. He was born in Huron and raised there and went to the University of South Dakota, graduated in 1986 with a degree in business administration. And then since then, he's been on the coaching carousel kind of all over the place at different levels of basketball. He's been in the junior college ranks. He's been in the CBA with the Rapid City Thrillers for a while. And then on top of that, has also made stops at San Diego, CSU Bakersfield, UC Irvine before being a head coach for 8 seasons at Kentucky Wesleyan, and then this 5-year stint now at Grand Canyon, where he was a very integral part of the success that program had. Of course, Dan Marley is the face of that program, and he has been on the record publicly directing a lot of the praise toward Todd Lee, saying this guy really has been a big reason for the success that they have had in a program that's in its infancy. Started from scratch, made the transition to Division I, and just completed its first season now this past year, where they were fully eligible for postseason and everything, made it to their conference championship game before losing, and then competing in the CBI. So Todd Lee has won a lot of basketball games, whether that be as an assistant or as a head coach, and he's done it everywhere he's gone. So that part right there is encouraging.
Well, you touched on most of it, but what makes Todd Lee such a good fit for USD? Because this is obviously, with the Final Four going on, there were a lot of people that were up for this job, wanted to look at this position, but why Todd Lee?
Well, I think there was a lot of things going into this search, as there is with any coaching search. But I think the fact that he's a South Dakota native is attractive to not only fans of Coyote basketball, but I think it certainly played a little bit of a role with David Herbster and the administration at USD, knowing that this guy is familiar with the state of South Dakota. He'll have to learn the Summit League because he hasn't really been around that as much, but at the same time, he has some sorts of connections around here and has some roots in this part of the country, which is obviously any time a coach comes in, any advantage you can gain is huge for you. And so certainly he's starting off on the right foot that way. He's a graduate of the University of South Dakota, so that, a lot of times when you get those guys in, maybe they're not as apt to jump ship for the first job that comes along. And the fact that he's a little bit older. Maybe this is a guy that's proven he can really coach. Maybe this is kind of the final stop for him. There's no way to know that, but certainly you could draw some conclusions, I think, based on his age and how many other different places he's been, and the fact that this is his first shot as a Division I head coach. And then there is connections personally too. When he was the head coach at Kentucky Wesleyan, Dave Williams, the deputy AD at South Dakota, was his athletic director for a couple of years. And so those guys go all the way back to then and have stayed in touch since then. So a lot of things playing into this but I think bottom line is, they talked to a lot of people about this job, and Todd Lee clearly did very well in his interview and rose to the cream of what will look like a pretty impressive crop of candidates from everything I heard. So, that much he's got going for him right off the bat coming in. Now the next question is, how does he handle the situation that he's inheriting?
Yep. All right, great stuff. Very exciting news for USD. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, switching gears to baseball for our baseball preview show. We'll begin in North Dakota, where our own Jody Norstedt has compiled his high school baseball and softball preseason power rankings with some input from coaches across the state. So starting with Class A, there is no surprise at the top of the rankings. I feel like we talk about the school a lot lately, but that's because they're currently in a great run of success. The defending state champs from West Fargo are in the spot. The Packers have a pretty good nucleus coming back from a team that finished 31-7 last year and captured the program's first state title since 2012. So Jody has them ahead of the rest. Minot takes the second spot. The Magicians were the preseason #1 in the coaches poll. Davies checks in at #3 with Century and North rounding out the top 5. But let's hear from the preseason #1 team. We asked the Packers what makes them confident that they can go back-to-back.
Everyone coming back was pretty good at the plate last year. I mean, 1, 2, 3, it'll be really good again this year. But even the guys coming in this year that didn't play last year, I mean, they're going to be good too. They played JV last year and they swung well for our JV team.
Our last couple of years have been good, but the years before that have been, kind of saddening and just kind of not the way we wanted to go out. But the baseball year last year and football year this year, it's just fun. You want to have another fun year like that.
Like you said, we kind of have the target on our back, being the defending champions, so we have to approach every game and play our hardest, because there's good teams in the East and in the whole state that can beat you on any given night.
All right, that sounds like a group that's ready to defend their title. So Jody, you're the one in charge of creating these rankings, so I'll ask you, what makes the Packers the team to beat again in Class A?
Well, Kelly, this is a program that always seems to be at or near the top, whether it's Babe Ruth, Cal Ripken, Legion, or varsity. They just have a juggernaut program, and even with Cheyenne taking some players, the city has been able to field 2 really good teams. Let's start with the pitching for the Packers. Ryan Barassa is back to be the ace of the staff. He led the Packers with 38 innings last season and struck out a team-high 45 batters while finishing with a 4-1 record. They'll have to replace some good arms. Drake Fletchy, Morgan Capon, Parker Borg all graduated, but Brett Peterson really likes the guys that are stepping into those spots. And the Packers do have all-state shortstop Jake Faircloth back, along with all-conference third baseman Tanner Zepeda. Both of those guys batted over 400 a year ago. And then you mix in Andy Grabdahl, of course, one of the best athletes in school history. This will be a team to be reckoned with. But let's go back to the power rankings. Minot is probably 1B in my book. The Magicians are pretty loaded. Carson Tonini is probably the top pitcher in the state. He'll anchor a veteran pitching staff for the Magicians. They have some multi-sport names in there. Creighton Rudolph was all-conference selection last year as a catcher. Minot hasn't won a state championship since '05. That drought could very well end this season. Now, Davies is another team that I expect to be in the mix at that #3 spot. The Eagles were the runner-up in the EDC, and then they took 3rd place at state. A couple of names that you need to look out for with the Eagles: senior Taylor Parrott and sophomore Cole Hage, both at ERAs right around 2 last season and combined to toss 70 innings. Hage is going to be a stud. He also hit .462 at the plate with 18 RBI in his freshman year. Now, I put Century at #4 on my top 5 list. Much like Dickinson, the Patriots graduated a lot of players off last year's team, but I think Century has enough firepower still back on this team. 2 dynamite pitchers, Jake Olson and sophomore sensation Cade Feeney, who each boasted an ERA under 1.6 last season. Feeney also hit .417 at the dish and drove in a team-high 24 runs. He's been following in his brother Dalton's footsteps quite well. Fargo North cracks my top 5 list too. I really enjoy this team. They have some characters on their squad. They also have guys that I feel have been playing baseball forever on that varsity team. Cameron Blazek is a top-end pitcher that was all-state 2 years ago. Here you see him hitting. And then as a sophomore, that was used to all-state 2 years ago. Chandler Eibach is coming off an all-state junior season as a catcher. And then you have other players like shortstop Brant Kolpak, utility man Jonas Sanders, that will be playing baseball in college next season. This is a core group that has been together for a while, and I think they can make a serious run at a state title come this season. There you have it, Kelly. That's my top 5. I'm sticking to it. We'll see how it all plays out if we ever get this season started.
Oh my gosh, I know, with the snow. But anyways, thank you, Jody, and we'll see you again in a little bit.
You bet.
When we come back, who will be the king of Class B this season? Jody lets us know why you shouldn't expect much to change at the top. Stay with us.
Midco Sports Tonight, presented by Avera Orthopedics.